Welcome to Real Estate Focus. I'm Calvin Law. My guest is Mike Mullin from Claro Advisor in Boston. Mike is the Chief Market Strategist and Financial Advisor. We're going to talk about financial literacy. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Calvin. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
It's been a while, isn't it?
It's been some time, but
yeah, several years ago.
we are.
Yeah,
Yep.
you were on the show, but glad you're back. It's like encore, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Sure.
So my first question is, let's talk about what is the outlook for the market in the economy as a whole in 2024?
Good question. Very broad. Obviously, that's a lot of that is on people's minds. Where are we in the economy now? I think people are generally concerned with things like inflation, which this morning we actually had a new monthly number for inflation, which actually was more good than bad. We're starting to see some inflation come down. People have felt it in their wallets over the past couple of years, and accordingly, the Federal Reserve has had to raise interest rates to sort of stem that. And I know interest rates are high, and it kind of hurts a lot of people and businesses now because the cost of borrowing has certainly gone up and the cost of debt has gone up. So in that case, we've seen it for people all over. Whether it's in the supermarket, you're going to shop for food, and that hurts. The prices have been raised. You're shopping for a car, you're shopping for a new home. Lots of things like big ticket items, down to small, that people have to pay more for, that are costing them more. Kind of unexpectedly too. People are used to the past 20 years or so of having low interest rates and low inflation, and now we're finally faced with a period of rising inflation and rising rates. So it's different. So I'm sure people are really concerned or want to know more about how the economy is and how interest rates are. And today's inflation report kind of helps a little bit because it shows that the actions that the Federal Reserve has been taking in general, the economy itself, that prices are coming down. You're not going to feel an immediate impact, and you're not going to see 20% discounts on things in the next period of time. But slowly you'll start to feel more comfortable with the price you're paying for goods and services. I think that the things we saw in this inflation report was the cost of cars and stuff really sort of helped bring it down. But when we go see food prices in the supermarket, things still seem pretty high, and so it's not an immediate impact. But the good news is that prices are a little bit more stable now, and prices are coming down. And how that translates into the economy is that it gives businesses and consumers a little bit more confidence that the price that they're paying now isn't really going to be that much different than, say, the price they're going to pay next year or the year after. So businesses and consumers can start to make investments in their future, whether it's a business who wants to open a new factory or produce more goods, hire more labor, or it's a consumer that wants to make that investment in a new home or a car. There's a little bit more confidence there. And so even though rates are high, and I understand the real estate focus that is kind of topical for your program, and with mortgage rates as high as they are right now, we haven't seen that in over 2 decades. So it's kind of maybe alarming for people who are looking to purchase a new home. But I think that they can feel a little bit more confident that the direction of rates will likely be more downward than upward. If the Federal Reserve has to maintain where they are for a little bit more period of time, or maybe even slightly increase a little bit more, they'll actually do that. But I think the direction and the way the market pictures it is that we'll start to see some cuts. Maybe in this report today actually kind of gives a little bit more confidence that might happen later on this year and into next year. And if we do see that, then, and you're a borrower, especially for a home, you might feel more comfortable taking on that mortgage and thinking that in the future you might be able to refinance that mortgage. So buying a home at this point in time might be a little bit more, a little bit more pleasing to think about, possibly doing that.
Right. So I think that to your point, the interest rates, I think in a normal real estate market, if you will, I think most people will see the rates down to 5% roughly if the Fed decided to continue cutting rates. From now on until 2025 or 2026, where we had 2%, 3% of interest rates. A couple of years ago, it wasn't the norm, if you will. I think the normal interest rates should be around 5%-ish. So that's my perspective if the Fed continue to cutting rates into 2025 and into 2026. Another question to you is that right now the Fed is aiming for the 2% inflation rate.
Yep.
Do you think it's going to happen? It's going to be difficult.
It's a long-term target, for the Fed, of course, but there's so many factors at play, and whether it's on their wish list, but that's kind of what they want to get to. They definitely wanted, prices to be more stable, and if that's the case, they can work their way down to that, 2%, maybe 3%, more of a ballpark. I mean, inflation sounds ugly, but it's not really, because really, we see inflation in all aspects, whether it's, even the price of our home, would go up. The price of goods, goods and services, will go up. The dollar over the course of time has gone up in value, especially compared to other currencies. So it's a sign of a good, stable economy when you do have, prices going up incrementally, in small doses. You don't want rampant inflation. That's when you have like a currency issue, when you're putting too much money into the system. You don't want deflation as much when you have prices going down in negative, because then it's also very difficult for, we'd love to pay less, but it's very difficult for businesses to make money at that point in time too. You need something in the middle, sort of, where it's more stable, where you see incremental growth across the board. And I think that, we talk about the economy, whether it's going to be a hard landing because we raise rates so much that something's going to break, or a soft landing where we kind of ease our way into it, or even like no landing has been talked about too, where we just keep plugging along. And so far that's kind of been the case. Having rates as high as they are does seem like it would be cause ripple effects throughout the economy, whether it's in home ownership or homes in period, whether it's in other types of borrowing throughout. Even credit card debt, that people are starting to take on now. People have seen those variable rates go up super high. So it does have that sort of negative impact. But the part that really keeps it going is us. We're consumers. We're a consumer society, fine, but we buy goods and services, and we're going to continue to do so. And we're going to go work. We're going to make money, and we're going to spend it. So we're also going to save, and we'll talk about that and why that's important for financial wellness. But that part of it, can kind of keep things going, as long as you believe that, that companies are going to make goods and services, and you're going to buy them, and things are going to go on. Then things are going to be okay. So that sort of no landing routine where you kind of get into just things keep going. Things aren't going to stop. Things are going to keep going. So that's the sort of thing that you have to sort of believe in and buy into, and that's kind of where the economy is headed, in my opinion.
Well, whether they're going to talk about safe landing, no landing, or hard landing, whatever, hopefully it's going to be a safe landing. Right?
Safe is probably a very appropriate word. Yeah.
So the next question is, why budgeting is so important? Whether people buying a property or buying, general consuming products, or for daily expenses, stuff like that. So why budgeting is important?
Okay, now that's a very important topic. I think that's kind of the topic of today anyway. So that's good that we get into it. And I'll kind of start off by saying that my role as you said, chief market strategist and financial advisor. Yes, I've been doing that for 25, 30 years. But one of the things that I've sort of gone into has been trying to teach financial literacy and financial wellness through I'm a CFA charter holder, so the CFA Boston is an organization, and they also have CFA Institute, which is global. And one of our missions in our mandate in Boston is to teach financial literacy to the public, because it's not really taught in schools. It's not taught as well as it should be. Let's put it that way. They're starting to do it a little bit more now. A lot of states, I think over 30 of them now, have incorporated, and that it has to be taught in schools. But a lot of times, the sad part is teachers don't necessarily want to teach it because there's some sort of risk involved. It's not something they're trained in as well, and so they have to go through retraining, and so it's not something that the schools want to embrace. However, it's not necessarily taught at home. There's plenty of homes out there, and we like to think all our parents and our people that we look up to would teach us good practices, but that doesn't really necessarily happen. It's not really taught in school, so where is it really taught, and how do people learn? Because once you get out into the world as a graduate from high school, a graduate from college or whatever, you're faced with a whole host of financial decisions, and you're not really prepared to make them. And it can get people off on the wrong track very easily. It got me off on the wrong track, when I started out too. So you can start to get into credit card debt. You can start to borrow and try to keep up with the Joneses sort of mentality, or just, or make bad investment decisions or business decisions and financial decisions. So it's a good place for people to have a foundation and a base. And at CFA Boston, we started that over 10 years ago. We ended up working with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of schools, a lot of for-profit companies too. They bring us in and talk to their employees about the very basics, and it's kind of great that other people are starting to recognize that, and I think it's going to give our future generations a foothold and something to sort of a foundation to stand on. So when you start out, we always start out with something like budgeting, because budgeting is super important. and I'll say, I have a slide up that, kind of, I think if people start thinking of it this way, like financial wellness, we talk about financial literacy, but the financial wellness part is kind of a good name, because we always think about our health, as our wellness, right? So we're always thinking about our physical health, our mental health. Those are very important to us individuals as we go, but your financial wellness, your financial health, is also important, and that's kind of what stems this conversation. So when we start talking about budgeting, which would be like the first priority, you gotta, if you're going out and you're starting a job and you're working, you want to make money, you all of a sudden have this income, but you could just go spend it frivolously, or you could come up with not a structure. You don't have to be like completely married to doing what very, very structured. You can still have some flexibility. That's the beauty of it. So you want to create a budget. So you're going to spend X amount of dollars on food. You're going to spend X amount of dollars on clothing, for your job. You're going to spend X amount of dollars on your health. We all pay, whether through Mass Health Connector, or we pay through, health insurance, or our employees pay it. Those are all like things that we need and are necessary. So you start to separate your needs from your wants. You're going to be going out, maybe go out to eat, or something like that. You might, a couple times a month go out to a restaurant. So you start to budget, that into it, because you don't want to spend all your dollars. If you make, $5,000 a month, and some of that is allocated towards taxes too. So you have to kind of carve that part out. Maybe you pay it in advance, maybe you don't. Then you start to think, okay, well, how much money do I have left? Now I have this many dollars to pay for food, this much to pay for clothes, this much to pay for shelter. Shelter is one of the biggest costs as well. What do you pay for rent? Do you pay a mortgage? Things like that are very wallet crunching, to us. So we have to kind of make sure we allocate those dollars properly so we have something left. If we don't have anything left afterwards, then we start to go into debt. And that's what people start to do. They start to borrow, on credit cards and stuff, and they get themselves into trouble, because now those credit cards become steep and they come with a high interest tag, and then you're kind of in creditor debt, creditor jail. It's hard to get out of that. So if you can start off right with a good budget, or even just a simple one that you keep in your head. A lot of people like to write them down. A lot of people have them very drawn out and detailed. You don't have to be, but as long as you have something in mind that you can kind of stick to, that's good. And it's not even something you have to look over time too, because you won't know the very first month. You might not know after 3 months or 6 months. But then you can start to get an idea after that, like how am I spending my dollars? Am I spending them mostly here or mostly there? And if I'm spending too much there, maybe I can cut that back a little bit. And you have to start to make those hard decisions. So that's pretty much budgeting.
Now, do you have a 80-20 rules or 70-30 rules, or you just pretty much like list the bunch of expenses that you have per month, and then just total them up, and then whatever you left after you pay all those expenses, then you're left with the remaining saving, or you can. This is what I've been doing. Take 10 to 20% of the paycheck, you got to pay yourself first, and then you pay the remaining expenses, or vice versa. You pay the expenses first, and then you save the remaining percentage, whatever left, with your paycheck.
Yeah.
So you can do it different ways. There are different ways of saving money and doing budgeting, if you will. So I mean, that's a good advice, because in America, based on what I've seen, is that I think between 60 and 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Definitely.
And a lot of Americans, they don't have any financial education. So I think that having a budget, saving, and also investing are very important as part of the education. So I told my kids, you got to earn, you got to pay your expense, you got to save, you got to enjoy, you got to invest, and you got to give.
And give too.
That's how you use money. And money is a tool at the end of the day. But if you don't invest, if you don't save, and if you don't budget, at least you know where your money is going to go in terms of paying bills and other expenses. Then you're going to lose track of saving money and investing, to make money work for you. Especially nowadays, with the cost of living and inflation are so high. I mean, you want to, make the money work for you. You don't want to save the money in 0.02% savings account, and basically you lose money that way instead of, making more money working for you. So that's what I told my kids, from a personal standpoint. So hopefully they follow my philosophy, if you will. And it's of my control, whatever they want to do, right?
Everyone out there too.
yeah, that's right. So as a financial advisor, I mean, what can you or most financial advisors do for their clients?
Well, a lot of what you said, everything kind of goes hand in hand, and it's all interwoven and tied together. Whether you're, I like what you said about, you try to save 10 to 15% of your paycheck, because that's actually one of the magic numbers, that people want to get to. And if you can carve that out initially, then you can start to make those budgeting decisions. But from a financial advisor standpoint, it's kind of morphed over the years to really be focused on financial planning, which kind of ties into financial wellness, because the financial planning part of it is setting goals. As I'm saying, talking to you as like a client, or you as a person who is looking to invest. Like, if you're setting goals, that's a huge first step. The fact that you have a goal is great. And if your goal is, I want to own a home at some point. My whole goal is I want to retire comfortably. My goal is I want to save for my kids' education, for their high school or college or whatever. I want to save for my daughter's marriage or something like that. Like, all those are goals. They can be small. I don't want to buy a car. They could be large. I need X amount of dollars to retire on. So from my standpoint, as an advisor or a planner, like, I'm coming in and trying to help you get to that goal, and I'm sort of educating you on all the different things that kind of go along with each of those, and devising a plan on how to get there. I would like to think we all could do it on our own, but I need help myself. So I always I'm asking for assistance, in certain things, because things change, whether it's like tax laws change, or investment laws change, or like there's just all sort of rules and regulations too that you have to follow. There's kind of a coach aspect of it, where you're encouraging people. You have to do. You're on target to meet this goal. We're doing a great job. You're not on target. We have to do something. We have to cut back on something that you're doing now. It's great because you see results, quickly, and a lot of people start changing their ways. So it's in a way it's kind of self-serving, because if I saw you and you all of a sudden were at point A and now you're getting to point B, I like to think that I helped you get there. So it's great to have that person on your side, kind of like a personal trainer. If you go to the gym, or kind of like a coach, in a sport or something like that. You're always there. That you're the expert. You don't have time because you're focused on your job, and your family. So it's nice to be able to guide people properly. It's not all about investments. Like, the actual investing part is like the last piece of the puzzle. The goal itself, how to get there. What are the things around it are critical. But then the last thing is, well, do I invest in like the S&P? Do I invest in a CD? You know, those sorts of decisions come like at the very end. So that's about
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you. So I think that in terms of investment, you have to be patient. I mean, you're not going to get rich overnight. I mean, and so planning accordingly and have the right financial goal. Those are very important goal setting. If people want to get rich or retire comfortably in the long run. So it takes time, just like everything else, you know, to build wealth. Unless, you know, people inherit wealth from their family and stuff like that. It's called generation wealth. Then this different. But it's, you know, self-made millionaires. I mean, I've seen a lot of self-made millionaires. I mean, it takes decades to become wealthy. So it takes time and be patient. So the next one is compound interest. What is compound interest? And that's one of the building wealth tools that is out there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you're alluding to. Takes time. I mean, you're not gonna. You could win the lottery. You could be very successful in a business venture. You know, sometimes those are, you know, luck creates, you know, opportunity. You know, luck occurs when preparation meets opportunity. You might just be in the right spot at the right place at the right time. You might have prepared for it and you know and did well. You might, you know, get a whole bunch of money generationally, like you said, you know, from a grandparent passing or something like that. There was, you know, some money, but even then, you have to know what to do with it too. So you shouldn't just, you know, go, yay, I got all this money, I'm going to go spend it. You know, you want to do something, you know, smart, you know, prudent with it. So the part about, you know, starting out saving, and if you have that little bit left over, that 10 to 15% a month, after all your other budgeting thing is done, and you can start to save it and invest it, that's the good part. That's, you know, you're planting the seed, because it's not going to grow overnight. You know, it's something that, you know, I have a slide up, you know, someone sitting in the shade today because they planted the seed a long time ago. You know, so Warren Buffett euphemism, you know, so but it's good. It makes sense, because a lot of that stuff goes, you know, your portfolio, if you're investing, you know, grows. You have $100, it maybe grows to, you know, 110, 120, you know, whatever. It's going to take time. The average investor return over a 25, 50-year time period is like 7.5%. You know, so that's better than inflation. We see inflation right now, you know, 3 to 3.5%. So you're keeping ahead of inflation. So you're able to buy those future goods and services and have a little, you know, have more to put towards that. But you know, you want to start out, and the compounding interest part is the most interesting aspect of it. You know, some call it I think Thomas Edison or someone's, you know, referred to it as the eighth wonder of the world. You know, some people know it and they, you know, earn it, and some people don't know it. You know, and what it really is that, you know, your $100, you know, earns 10%. Now it's worth 110. That 110, you know, the very next year, you know, earns another 10%. Now it's 121. So you earn like an incremental dollar the next year, because now you're starting at a higher base. So when you start out with nothing, you know, it's harder to grow. But once you start building money, and, you know, it starts to accumulate and grow faster, and it compounds. I don't know if I actually have that slide on here, and I don't. But if you if you ever saw it, oh, here it is actually. All right, so, you know, if this is up around, it'll kind of show you the power of compounding interest. And the idea of it is that you want to start saving early, as early as possible, because the earlier you do, the more build a big of a base you're going to get. And so in this case, there's two investors, and one starts earlier than the other by 10 years. And they save the same amount each year, they earn the same amount of return, so that's like, you know, that status is the same. But the one who started earlier, you know, by the time they retire at the same age, has earned a lot more money, you know, over time, because the power of the compounding interest. Because once they built a base, it really started to steepen and grow, because now they're earning 10% on $100,000. Now they're earning 10% on $200,000. So it's like it just you know, is able to accelerate the growth over time. And so, you know, they're better off in that situation. So I mean, that could be you. You know, if you're starting out investing, maybe it was you if you're, you know, lucky to retire early. You know, so those are the things that kind of can happen if you have that knowledge beforehand. Maybe you take advantage of it.
So this is what I told people, is that, well, I don't care how old you are, how young you are. I mean, of course, you know, when you invest at a young age, I mean, you got to be, you know, setting or reaching your financial goal much faster when you get to 40s or 50 years old, because of compound interest. So even if you have a little bit, just start to invest. right? Don't wait, because you rather invest and not invest. Because you don't want to depend on the government to live, with your pension or social security paycheck in the future, because those benefits could disappear, down the road. So invest now. I don't care how old you are or how young you are, how old, whatever. So just invest, starting to invest, and let it compound within 10, 20 years. When you retire, you have that money after tax, of course, live comfortably. Again, I know that you can't give any financial advice. Now, there are a lot of options to invest out there: index funds, mutual funds, stock, CD, ETF, blah, 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 cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. So, for the general idea, yeah, what would people put in first, let's say?
Well,
your personal opinion.
All I ever do is give financial advice. That's
right.
So I can't, but you're right. I can't say, hey, go buy this XYZ stock, and that wouldn't be, wouldn't be financially prudent of me to do so, to tell anybody that. What I can say, it's not a straight line. There's going to be volatility on the way. So you, as a person, as an investor, have to assess yourself and say, am I risk averse? Am I willing to take on risk? Because you're going to see volatility, and you have to have time on your hands too. Because if the stock market, or if there's a financial or the economy hits a roadblock and stumbles a little bit, that's going to affect the prices of companies and stuff too, and investments. And then you'll see a dip. So, but if you can see it, but over time it will recover. Because I said before, people are always going to go out and buy goods and services, and so the economy is just going to keep chugging along, and there's going to be growth over time. So you have to believe in that, and that's part of your investment. So I think that investing in like Warren Buffett always says, with his wife, he's like, if I pass, I just want to have her in an S&P 500 index fund. It's easy way to go. You're investing in the top 500 companies, publicly traded companies in the United States. They're very diverse, very broad. You're basically just taking an investment in the economy and in the growth of things. So that's a very safe, easy way to go. Doesn't mean it's not going to have some volatility to it, but over time, you should be better off.
Right. So another advice from Dave Ramsey is that once you invest, just continue to invest. When the market falls or deflated, continue to invest. Don't get off. When you get off and get back on, you're gonna get hurt the most.
We're emotional by nature.
Right.
So we're
ignore the news. Ignore the noise.
Part of my job, I tell people, I'm there to kind of hold your hand as well. Get you through those times, because you want to make investment decisions. They might not be the right one. So I try to help and coach people on that.
Long term, big picture.
Yeah.
Right. Well, great, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm glad you're here today.
Thank you.
So I hope the information that consumers found is going to be helpful. So with that being said, before thinking about or planning to own a property, there are a few important things to be mindful of so that the buying process can be smooth and without any hiccup. So a couple of things that you need to do first: budgeting, saving, improving your credit score, pay off any debt that you have, and have at least 3 to 6 months of emergency fund in case you lost your job or your financial situation changes down the road. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you for watching.